Joining us now, criminal defense attorney Arthur Idali. Been with us throughout the whole thing. First, just want to get your immediate reaction. The former leader of the free world tonight, a convicted felon.
Yeah, it's not a good day for America. I don't care how you want to look at it. You could slice it up a lot of ways. I don't agree 100% with what the district attorney just said, because the judge, and we spoke about this the other night, the judge did not tell the jurors that they had to be unanimous, that the false records were created to affect the election. They could have said they were created to create this false 1099 that was created to Michael Cohen, or state election laws. Once the judge gave the charge to the jury, Lindsay, I was like, all right, he's getting convicted, because the judge made it.
So prior to that, you thought...
I thought it may be a hung jury, that may be hard to decide, because I was under the impression, and when I say this, it's not like I don't know the law. This is a unique case. This is the first time this has ever been done. Don't forget, you're talking about misdemeanors outside of the statute of limitations that are brought back inside of the statute of limitations if there's an underlying crime to commit a felony. The judge did not insist that the jurors be unanimous on what that underlying crime is. He kind of gave them a menu. He said you could say it was to create tax fraud, it could be to create election fraud, or any other crime that would be that could be a felony. So there are real appellate issues here. And, you know, after we hear about a conviction, everyone says, oh, there's going to be an appeal, there's going to be an appeal, and the majority are not successful. And I'm not saying this is going to be a successful appeal, but whoever the lawyer is who crafts this appeal, it will be real legal gymnastics. It will be the height of lawyering to really focus on the issues here and whether this case should have and could have been brought to begin with.
So on what grounds would you appeal if you were actually Trump's attorney?
Well, I can tell you the way Judge Merchan allowed Alvin Bragg's team to bring this case, there are other judges who I've spoken to who said, I wouldn't allow this to come forward. These are cases that are beyond the statute of limitations.
But isn't this vindication for Alvin Bragg today, that 12 everyday New Yorkers, as he described them?
Obviously, it's a sense of vindication. And I don't want to make this too personal, but I lived this, right? So the Harvey Weinstein decision came down. He was found guilty of all charges. There was exact same press conference. The witnesses who were there, and they had a press conference. And then years later, the Court of Appeals said it wasn't a fair trial. And then the defendant has a day of vindication. I'm not saying that's going to happen here, because it is naive to say politics does not play a role here. You're in a very democratic area. The judges on the court, on the appellate division, I believe, are all appointed by Democratic governors. To say that that's not going to have an effect, I think, is naive. If this trial took place in the county of Richmond, which is Staten Island, New York, I don't believe the same verdict would have been achieved. So, look, Donald Trump right now is probably the most joyful of his whole team. I've been in the position to lose a big case. All the air comes out of your lungs, and, you know, it's a sense of loss, a sense of failure. You're very upset. And I've been on the other side, too. Right now, the prosecutors are in some room somewhere where no one can see them. It's very private, and they're celebrating, as they're allowed to. They worked very, very hard. They gave up weekends and birthday parties and all kinds of events to work on this case. These are what trials are all about. But as objective as I could be, someone like Donald Trump in Manhattan, where we know the jury pool comes from the voter logs, and the voters here voted for Joe Biden, I think 83 to 17, you know, they had an uphill battle to begin with.
Okay, so July 11th is the sentencing. You were talking about appeals. Just want to put a pin in this for a moment. But as far as appeals go, this could take years, as you know personally.
Yes.
And so then, speaking of this being political, it's kind of too late with regard to, as we've seen in the polls, about 20% of people who said that they would support Trump now as a result of him being a convicted felon. They're saying, I might actually reconsider that vote.
Yes, I mean, I am not qualified to talk about the effects that this could have on an election, but I will tell you, I think the greatest challenge for Judge Merchan may be right now. What do you sentence Donald Trump to? Now, I will tell you this. It would be the height of hypocrisy, Lindsay, if the district attorney's office asks for jail time. This is a process.
Even though he could, up to 4 years would be
yes,
fair
absolutely,
game.
He can. But this is a DA who has run on giving people second chances, on alternatives to incarceration, on basically anything but jail, even in violent felony cases. This is the lowest level felony in E. It goes from A to E. This is the lowest level. It's a paper case, meaning there's no violence. This is a, forget that he was the former president. He's a man who's almost 80 years old, who's never been in trouble in his life. Those are just not cases where people go to jail.
Let me just say, this, right after we saw this every day, pretty much, he was railing on Judge Merchan, right? He's called him a tyrant.
Oh, he's called him a lot of things.
He now has the power to decide his fate. And so there are a few options, right? We talked about potential for 4 years in prison, home confinement. He could do community service, probation. What do you think is the most likely? Well, and if you were his attorney, would you have said, you know, maybe ixnay on the insulting of the judge?
So, truth be told, I was asked to be part of the Trump team several different times, and one of the reasons why I wouldn't, and it wasn't the only reason, but I knew he would be a hard client. He would be a hard client to control. I absolutely would be like, Mr. President, this is the guy who may sentence you at the end of the day. Maybe we should chill out, but he wasn't going to do that. I think Judge Merchan's going to have a hard time figuring out a sentence. Again, I don't think Judge Merchan is going to sentence him to any jail time. I think that would be ridiculous in this case. And it would be a logistical nightmare. I mean, it could cause civil unrest. I just don't think, and I think Judge Merchan is going to ask Albany, the capital of New York, to show me the statistics. How many E felonies, which is this kind of case, do people go to jail on? And I think he's going to find the answer is close to zero. So for him to all of a sudden say, on this one case, I'm going to send someone to jail, it's a big problem. I think he's got to come up with some form of community service that makes Manhattan a better place.
So he might be like picking up trash?
No, I think he's got to do something bigger than that. Like, I want Mr. Trump, I want you to come to me and you tell me how you could use your stature, your financial status to make New York a better place, whether it be for senior citizens, for children, the police athletic league, but something to make New York a better place. I don't see him telling the president of the United States with 2 Secret Service guys, go to a park and clean graffiti. But, you know, and there may be a financial aspect, but I don't think there's enough the judge has enough power to give a financial fine that's going to hurt Donald Trump at all.
Last question for you. What do you think about, you have Michael Cohen. Many people had been questioning his credibility, right? He had said at one point years ago, I would have taken a bullet for Donald Trump. Now, does it seem to you that he was the key potentially to his undoing?
Well, it was definitely, and it was Pecker, too. In other words, if I'm the prosecutor and I go to sleep last night and the jurors' notes, or I want to hear from Mr. Pecker, who is the National Enquirer guy, their first witness, they led with their strongest witness, as they should. You only get one chance to make a first impression with the jury, and they did with Mr. Pecker. And they said, hey, let's see if Pecker and Cohen's testimony, when they read back, jive. And they did. And that was, I guess, the support that a few of the jurors, or maybe all of the jurors, needed to say, okay, don't forget, Lindsey, it was acting in concert. The prosecutor didn't have to prove Donald Trump did all of this. They just had to prove that he had an agreement with other people to do this. And the Pecker-Cohen meeting at Trump Tower, for the jury, clearly that was a relevant point because that's the readback they asked for. So if you look at it, the first witness they heard from was Pecker, and then the last witness they heard from, because that was the readback he asked for.
I could talk to you all night. Arthur Aidala, we thank you so much.
Well, this has been a pleasure for me. It's been a highlight covering this case and getting to know you and having the honor of being on your show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.